Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology, and this is December 28th, 2020. So we are in the last few days of 2020. It's hard to believe that it's here. I barely know what day it is, what time it is these days. It just seems like time is very strange. But, I was thinking about this because it's hard to believe that Saturn went into Aquarius just, what was that, like a week ago, a couple weeks ago? It feels like I don't know, it feels like another time. So, time is being funny again. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman. I'm an astrologer and psychic medium here in Brooklyn, New York. We gather every week to talk not only about the astrology, but how do we best align ourselves with this time. I tell people that the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. There are things that you can control and things that you cannot control. And how do you find the balance? And who we are and who we think we are and everything that's in the way can act as a powerful filter for the astrology and maybe not for the best way. So we use this time, we use this astrology, we use everything that's been going on lately and then the astrology. How do we open ourselves up? How do we transform? How do we make the best and the most out of this time? So I love connecting with you on a weekly basis. And I also want to say hello to those who do watch the replay, whether it's my IGTV channel, whether it's also on Spotify or on YouTube. I know Erica's ready for 2020. I think I'm ready for 2021. I have a pet theory about 2021. We'll see how it holds out. My theory is that I feel like the last 13 years, 13 years, because astrology is about time. Astrology is about understanding arcs of time and like these intersecting arcs of time. And we understand time on a personal level, like it's our birthday every year. Well, that's one cycle. Astrology is all these interlacing cycles. And there was a cycle that began in 2008. And yes, you've heard me talk about 2008 over and over again because I feel like deep in my bones. And I feel like you all are living it as well as something began then, even if it wasn't so obvious. So I feel like the last 13 years, and even in particular the last 3 years, 2018, 2019, 2020, we're preparing us for 2021. And I feel like the space that we cleared and the things that we changed and the things that we reorganized, it all has to sort of take shape and take form in 2021. So we'll have to see how that goes. We'll have to see how that you live that on your level or your personal level, and then I live that on my level. So this week we have a Cancer full moon on December 29th or December 30th for those who are a little bit further ahead, those who are in Europe, those who are in Australia. I should say hi to those that are watching the live broadcast. I know that you are all around the world, and I do enjoy to travel vicariously through you all. I know that some of you are in Australia and kind of waking up to me. I know you kind of get this the next day, but it doesn't mean that it's absolutely still valid. So, this week we have a Cancer full moon, a full moon that puts the spotlight on home and family and heart and connection. And it's always important to understand, especially for those that only know astrology on a sun sign level, is that there's all these different things to look at. You're not just your sun sign. You are all 12 signs of the Zodiac. They exist somewhere in your chart. The sun is just one major point. So you may be thinking, well, Katie, I'm not a Cancer. Well, it doesn't matter. Maybe you are. You have a full moon in your sign. It means you're in the spotlight. It means that life is sort of like looking at you. Everybody's looking at you. Right now it's about relationships and connection. But for the rest of us, this is a time in the Zodiac, the lunar calendar, when we have to focus on what really matters. And certainly this is the season where, we tend to typically, I realize this is through more of a Judeo-Christian, more of a Christian lens, but, we kind of take stock of what matters, what we spend time with family usually, and I've realized that, that's family and connections not always an easy thing for people. So a Cancer full moon, while it can point point us towards family. It can also bring up a lot of complicated emotions. So nevertheless, Cancer is a sign that wants us to connect. And I was looking at the full moon for tomorrow, December 29th, and I noticed how this is the first full moon in Cancer that's not an eclipse. For those that have been paying attention, especially if you are a Cancer, we had eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn since July 2018 all the way up until June of 2020. That means if you were a Cancer, your life was probably really interesting, 2018, 2019, 2020. But for the rest of us, when we were having eclipses in Cancer, and it was a North Node was in Cancer, it's maybe a little technical point, we had to kind of go towards what fed us, what fed our heart, what really made us feel loved and connected, and sort of look at the things that we were doing out of duty and responsibility, or sort of a negative connection, South Node in Capricorn, that was preventing that. Because every cycle, every day, every month, it's sort of we're sort of personally working on something, we're also collectively working on something. So we had these sort of big shifts in the past couple of years that was trying to get us to open up our hearts and really go for what's going to feed and nurture us, and not sort of get stuck and bogged down in the stuff that kind of holds us back or imprisons us. So this full moon that we have on tomorrow, December 29th, at 8 degrees of Cancer, in a way, it does echo back to these eclipses. It echoes back to the things that we reached for in 2018, 2019, and 2020. It reminds us that bigger lesson was we can't do things and not be fed. I mean that, of course, metaphorically. We can't do things and it sort of be crushed by duty and responsibility. So this full moon, and we will go quickly through the Zodiac, so this full moon is opening in your life, is just that kind of reminder that home and family is important. And this is a little bit of a technical point, but in the Zodiac, Aries is the first sign. Cancer is the fourth sign. When you look at what's called a natural chart, Cancer's at the bottom. So Cancer represents roots, it represents stability, it represents sort of what connects us to this world. And again, I know family is often, because some of you are my clients, I've heard a lot of stories. Family is something that can be very complicated. But how do you create that stability? How do you create that sense of roots and connection? And even if your own family is a bit of a complicated story, how do you create something very new? And maybe all the work that you were doing the past couple of years, especially with Pluto and Capricorn, Saturn and Capricorn, Jupiter and Capricorn, was to help clear space so that you can have things in your life that actually do nurture you, do care for you, and people in your life that maybe are like family, even if they're not blood family. So we're feeling our hearts this week. We're feeling nostalgia. Cancer is very much a nostalgic sign. Cancer is a sign that it has an emotional connection to things staying the same. Cancer is a sign that has a lot of resonance with Taurus, another sign that doesn't necessarily like things to change. It's just kind of a little bit more on the materially driven to keep things the same. But Cancer has an emotional connection to things, and it's like, it holds on to things. It holds on to photographs and things from the past and memories. So maybe we're sort of going through our own personal psychic inventory around this full moon. We're looking at photographs. We're looking at the past. We're feeling nostalgic for the people we were, maybe the people we were at the start of the year, maybe the people we were long ago. Maybe, hopefully, we're feeling hopeful for the future. But nevertheless, this is a full moon that wants us to kind of get cozy, to make connection, to be around the people that are going to really make us feel stable and loved and nurtured. Like I said, if you're feeling kind of that old heart space sort of get pushed and opened or a little teary-eyed, that's Cancer. That's what it does. It softens us up, and we, of course, could use some softening after everything that we've been through this year. And maybe this is a very interesting coda on an intense year. Like, okay, well, after everything that's happened over the last 11, 12 months, how do we feel safe again? Who's going to hold us? Who's going to nurture us and care for us? And maybe it's a friend, maybe it's ourselves, maybe it's something else, but that's really kind of at the heart, no pun intended, of this Cancer full moon. So if you are an Aries, Cancer is home and family. So the spotlight is on your very roots, your very foundations, and you may be looking to move. You may be looking to make a change in your living situation. You may be thinking, who's home? Who's going to be there for me? Maybe an issue with a family member or somebody in your household comes up. But when there's usually a full moon in this part of your chart, it usually talks about a change in your home environment. It doesn't have to be a bad change. Maybe you're trying to feather your nest. You're trying to make things a little bit better as you go into the new year. Maybe you're reaching out to family more. Maybe you're feeling kind of the ache of not having family around. But sometimes there's a move or some sort of change in the home around this full moon, or any time of full moon is in that area. Thankfully, this full moon doesn't have a lot of hard aspects to it. It does, kind of make what's called a sextile to Uranus. So how does things open up for, doing things a little bit differently? Uranus kind of gives us an opportunity to, maybe connect to people we had never connected to, or see things in a way we hadn't seen things before. But it's a sextile, so it's a little quiet. Moving on to what's after Aries, Taurus. So this full moon is in your sign of communication and voice, and how do you speak, how do you listen, how you learn. So you may, there may be some information that is shared with you with this eclipse, or maybe not eclipse, I got eclipses on the brain, with this full moon. Maybe you have a conversation that's illuminating. Maybe you make a decision. Maybe you are focusing on classes and learning, and maybe even travel or trips, the best you can these days. Maybe you're trying to kind of talk about how you feel more, because this is Cancer. It may be speaking and communication and listening, but it has to be heart-based. So maybe you're really opening up at this time, Taurus. Moving on to Gemini. So Cancer is one of your money signs. So this full moon is putting the spotlight on money, how you earn it, how you make it, how you spend it, what you think you need in order to feel safe and secure, and maybe kind of these more deeper questions of value and worth, especially self-worth. So when there's a full moon in this part of your astrology chart, it's not uncommon to make a big purchase or kind of focus on what's going on in your bank accounts, and maybe think a little bit more on a broader sense of, how do I create more financial stability in my life right now? Do keep in mind that full moons mean that the sun is opposite the moon. So we're in Capricorn season right now, and it also means that the moon is in the sign that's opposite Capricorn. So Cancer is always opposite Capricorn, and so for example, Gemini, the sun is in one of your money signs. It's about finance. And I will say that with the sun and Capricorn, and this is true for all of you, we're sort of, it's like the coda, it's like the end of this 2-3 year story that we've been going through back when Saturn was in Capricorn. I know you're like, stop talking about Saturn and Capricorn. But I think we need to sort of take some stock while the sun is in Capricorn. So, the sun is in a part of your chart right now that Saturn occupied for 3 years. So maybe some of these little loose ends and these stories and these things that we wrapped up on December 17th, we're needing to sort of go back and, clean up or tidy up, for example. Cancer. So as I mentioned earlier, this full moon the spotlight's on you. It's in your sign. It's in Cancer. So this is a time when, all eyes are on you. It's a time of new beginnings. It's a time where it's about relationships. It's about taking action, being a leader, some initiative. So when there's a full moon in your sign, things tend to be a bit busy. Things tend to be a little bit dramatic. It's not an eclipse, so it's very different energy than eclipses. Eclipses tend to be way more dramatic, but it does mean that for some cancers, especially those that are born within like the first week, kind of plus or minus, especially that 7 days or so into Cancer, spotlight's on you. Maybe it's kind of a big thing. Maybe you're making some big decisions. Maybe you're going off in a new direction. Maybe it is about relationships, because the Capricorn sun is in your relationship sign. Moving on to Leo. So this full moon is in a very quiet, tucked away part of your chart. I call it the 12th room of your astrology house. So when there's a full moon in this part of the chart, it's in the last part of your chart. It's about letting things go. It's about preparing for the next chapter. It's about spirituality, rest, reflection, recuperation. So this full moon is really pointing at some internal time, some internal work, and certainly it's been a tough year for a lot of people. So maybe you are really doing some deep reflective work at this time. So do turn your eyes towards more, let's say, material, or not material, but spiritual, intuitive, meditation is really great for this full moon. Maybe you're looking, at your dreams. Maybe you're getting certain insights, intuitive insights or downloads at this time. So really look within and sort of prepare yourself for this kind of next big chapter, because Leo, and I'm going to say this is the case for Taurus, this is the case for Scorpio, this is the case for Aquarius. 2021 is going to be a big year for you. Saturn is now in Aquarius. Uranus is in Taurus. We're going to have something called a square next year. So this is why I said when we first started our time together that my pet theory is that 2021 is the year that sort of the old and the new have to, there's going to be a friction. So there's some part of your life that stands in for the old. There's one part of your life that stands in for the new. And it's almost like these two parallel stories that were happening in 2018, 2019, 2020 now have to come together, but it might not be an easy fit. So the signs that are really feeling that are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. And if you're like, oh, I'm one of those signs, well, it means that 2021 is likely going to be a big year for you. One that's kind of pushing you to make some big step ups in your life, but also pushing you to let go of maybe some of the things that just aren't working anymore, that maybe are impeding growth or getting in the way. So I say that for Leo, but of course I mean this for all the signs, but these 4 signs in particular. Virgo. So this full moon is in your sign of friendship. It's in sign of community. This part of your chart that is about social connection. So you are sort of reaching out, and because it's Cancer, it's like your friends have to be like family. You have to have a really strong connection to the people in your life. So you're sort of reaching out there, you're sort of getting involved in your community or maybe a social cause that your heart is really connected to. This is also a part of your astrology chart that points you towards the future. So maybe you're sort of looking ahead. You're like, okay, I've made these big changes in my life, Virgo, and what's next? If you've made some achievements in 2020, or maybe these were achievements that you weren't expecting at the start of 2020, it's time to look ahead. It's time to dream. It's time to hope. It's time to wish for something better. And then you being a Virgo, I mean this lovingly, strategize and plan for the next coming year or beyond. I mean, who knows? Maybe 21 kind of throws it all up in the air, kind of like 2020 did. Libra. So Cancer is the part of your chart that talks about career. It talks about your place in the world. It talks about the direction, your ambitions. So when there's a full moon in this part of your chart, the spotlight is on your professional life. So it's very common that like around the time of this full moon, there's a shift in your professional life. There's a shift in your direction. You're getting recognition. You're in the spotlight professionally. You're making a change of job, or there's something going on in your career. But it's, like I said, we're not having eclipses in this part of the chart anymore. So maybe it's just like a little bit of an echo to this kind of story that was woven through 2018 through 2020. Scorpio. So like I said, you're in the boat. You're in the boat for change. This full moon is in your sign of travel, foreign travel, but also travel in more of a broader sense. Like, how do you look out into the world? What do you believe? What's your convictions? What sort of philosophy or code do you live your life towards? And how do you, what do you stand up for? What do you put your faith in? And because it's Cancer, your heart has to be in it. It has to be heart aligned. So you can't do something that you're not passionate about, or you don't feel, you kind of feel connected to on an emotional level. So this is the part of your chart that does talk about higher education. And maybe you are looking at schooling. Maybe it's a training if it's not higher education. Maybe it's broadcast and publishing. Maybe it's gazing out into the world longingly because we can't all travel the way that we used to. Maybe you're doing that in other ways. Maybe you're turning towards culture through books or movies. So that's where the full moon is for you, Scorpio. But like I said, with the Saturn now in Aquarius, with Uranus now in Taurus, you're one of those signs where 2021 is sort of that friction between the old and the new. Sagittarius. So this is the part of your chart that really gets at the deep, deep heart of things. This is what I call the eighth room of your astrology house. And the eighth room is the room that we all at some point have to go into, whether it's a full moon, whether it's the sun is going through there, or whether it's longer because Saturn is there. But the eighth room is where we go to face ourselves. So if you're feeling deep emotions, things that you haven't noticed, or it's a very psychological time, because it's Cancer, it does talk about family. So these could be things from the past, from childhood, family secrets, skeletons, things coming out of the closet, so to speak, because these are things that are deeply buried. So these could be hidden emotions. And so these are things that are really highlighted right now. This part of the chart also does talk about finance. So maybe you're having to kind of do some financial reviews. It is the end of the year, meet with a financial planner. Look, I'm a Scorpio, so I don't mind talking about wills and estate planning. I know that kind of weirds people out, but this full moon is in the part of your chart that does talk about wills and estate planning. And so if that kind of happens to come up, then there you go. Nevertheless, I would definitely look at financial planning as you go into the coming year, and how do you sort of get your ducks in a row for the next, fiscal quarter. Moving on to Capricorn. So Cancer is your relationship sign. And yes, there were eclipses in this part of your chart the past 2 years. So maybe there was a lot of big shifts in relationships, and all relationships, of course, doesn't necessarily have to be, romantic or committed partnership. Nevertheless, this part of your chart is highlighted. So if you are in a committed partnership, there's something about your partner, there's something about the relationship that's in the spotlight. If you and a partner are not on the best terms, the full moon can sometimes push things to the surface, and then you have to deal with them. If everything is great, fantastic, then maybe there's some event that's happening in your relationship, or even event that's happening in your partner's life. But hopefully you've learned a lot of lessons about relationships over the last past years. So this is about kind of those echoes to the past that are happening, and something that I'm going to talk about in a few moments. Venus is on the South Node this week, so if an old flame comes up, don't be surprised. Moving on to Aquarius. Aquarius, you are in the spotlight in so many ways right now. You not just have Saturn in Aquarius, you have Jupiter in Aquarius too. Nevertheless, Cancer is the part of your chart that talks about how you take care of yourself. It's health, it's wellness, it's how you take care of yourself on a physical level. So maybe you're sort of, making your annual checkups. I mean, I guess it's all telemedicine these days. Or maybe you're looking towards other things to kind of, New Year's resolutions, looking at fitness, looking at diet changes, positive changes, whatever your body needs. But also it's work. It's also how you have your day organized. So this is sort of this very nuts and bolts full moon for you. And because it's the end of the year, maybe you're like, oh, I gotta clean up the house. I gotta get things organized. I gotta prepare for 2021. Lastly, Pisces. So Cancer is your sign of self, and not self on a kind of individual or kind of like a basic level. I mean self like this, what is it that makes us us? What is it that, persona, personality, creativity, that level of self. So this full moon is very much about you expressing yourself. And if you're not a creative person, maybe you suddenly are finding your creativity. Maybe you're thinking, maybe you're expressing yourself in other ways. And because it's Cancer, maybe your heart is on your sleeve. This is the part of your astrology chart that also talks about romance. So maybe, your heart's in your sleeve because you got romance on your mind. Nevertheless, this is also the time to have fun, to play, to relax. Maybe you're taking some time off. Maybe you're going on vacation, or maybe you're thinking about all the creative things you want to do in the coming year. So this is where this full moon highlights each of the 12 signs of the zodiac. Also listen for your rising sign, because, and I do get this question often, all the time as an astrologer. I always like, which one is it? Do I listen for my sun sign or do I listen for my rising sign? And I'm like, both. Both are these two parallel things that are happening in your life, unless you were born at sunrise, and then you just read, because the sunrise means that the sun is rising at the same sign as you were born in. So then you would just focus on your sun sign. So that is a look at the Cancer full moon in each of the 12 signs. As I said, there are a couple other things going on. It's a little bit of a quiet week as we go into the new year. Venus is on the South Node on December 30th. Venus at the same time is making what's called a square to Neptune. And Neptune was a big thread in the solar eclipse of December 14th, 2020. So there's something about this week, maybe, that just activates this eclipse story for each and every one of us. That said, when Venus is on the lunar nodes are like this really powerful axis of fate. I know fate's a big word, but when the nodes are involved, it's like people come into our lives, people come out of our lives. And because Venus is on the South Node, the South is about the past. Maybe it's an old lover, maybe it's an old relationship or an old flame or maybe we're even thinking about somebody from the past. It is a Cancer full moon, and we're feeling nostalgic, or we feel like there's something's unresolved, or maybe it's just simply a theme, that we keep returning to over and over again. So really pay attention to who's texting you, who's DMing you this week, or sort of the stories that are very familiar that are coming up for you to look at, because the South Node in astrology is also a point of release. It's where we have to let go. It's the past. We can't hold on to it anymore. We have to go towards the North Node. Right now, the North Node is in the sign that's opposite Sagittarius. It's Gemini. So we have to sort of leave behind the old judgments around relationships and connection and romance. We have to leave behind everything that's been kind of putting our blinders on, and then open up to something new, because when the North Node is in Gemini, it's about new perspective, new ideas, new information, new way of seeing things. Gemini has such a curiosity of life. Usually, I know it can get a little crazy, but that's sort of the idea with the sign, is that we need to try everything instead of being stuck in one pattern or one way, are dating or seeing one kind of person. So that said, if that sort of happens this way, if that happens this week, then you know exactly why people are popping up from the past. Those are our big aspects for this week. Like I said in previous Facebook Lives, and also the replay for those that are watching it, Saturn's now in Aquarius. We are in a new time as of December 17th. Last week, feels like ages ago. Jupiter also entered Aquarius. We had the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn on the solstice on the 21st. So it's a new time, but because it's a new time, it's not always so clear what's coming into focus. So I always tell people, just journal, take notes, jot things down in your electronic calendar so you can go back and be like, oh, that's what was happening on this date. That was the conversation I was happening. So you can see the thread that you will keep returning to throughout 2021 or even 2022, because Saturn doesn't leave Aquarius until March of 2023. I did a whole webinar on Saturn and Aquarius. You can still get the replay. I'll have to make sure that the link is in the show notes. That said, I love seeing you all week by week. This is just a quick housekeeping note, because I did mention this in my update today, and I guess not everybody had gotten the news. I'm not doing my written monthly horoscopes anymore, not because I don't love you, not because they isn't something that is I kind of feel proud about doing. It's just I'm running out of time, guys. So I have to make some. This is where my own Saturn, conjunct or square Uranus is happening. For me as a Scorpio, it's like, how do I share this because you all are having your own experiences. How do I make space for something new? I can't make space for something new when there's just a lot of things on my bandwidth. So the beautiful thing about 2020, even though it was a very difficult year, is there was a lot of professional growth. A lot of you are my clients. Having a lot of client sessions also means that there's kind of less time to write. So I gotta start to rearrange things. And I didn't, I need to hire like a part-time assistant, like a couple hours a week. Anyway, these are my personal and professional goals as I go into 2021. It is Capricorn season. It is also all about looking ahead and making plans and setting goals, and as much as we can in what feels like really crazy times. Nevertheless, it is Capricorn season. So we are in manifestation. I always say that we are in physical bodies, which means we are under the rules of Saturn, which means we have to abide by time, we have to abide by aging, responsibility, setting goals, setting structures, building. And so that's where we're at now that it's Capricorn season and we go into the new year. That's why this is the time we make decisions, we make resolutions. And these are, Capricorn energy is about things, setting things in stone, setting things, and so that it's a milestone, so that it lasts. So, it's got that kind of weight behind it. So that's why we kind of make these decisions at this time. So thank you so much. Yes, this is another point. So I'm doing video horoscopes, and I'm going to try to have some sort of transcript involved. But like new systems that have to be implemented, there's going to be some growing pains. So I just ask you all to be a little patient with me, but I am going to do individual videos for each 12 signs. And hopefully this will free up some much needed time. So otherwise it's just me writing for 2 days straight. And that, unfortunately, I can't do that anymore. So thank you all again for joining me every week and, supporting me throughout this crazy year, and even, being on these live calls, being my clients. And I am genuinely thankful for each and every one of you, because you really helped this all grow in 2020, and to have actually 2020 be a really successful year. Silver linings. So be well, be safe. I'll see you in 2021. Bye.